currently being delivered to allied health professionals across England, Wales, and soon Northern Ireland. I put a date on this presentation, July 2018, because voice banking is based on technology, and as it's IT, things change. So this is the best training that I can deliver at this date, though I'm aware that voice banking technology will change. So it's best to check again if you're looking at this in the future. So in this training, just going to talk about just an introduction to voice banking and some useful resources that I've come across. One thing I'm going to do is these slides, which I'm showing you online, I'm going to make available to you online as well. So you can access the slides and all the references into it. And then just going to talk a little bit on how soon voice changes in motor neuron disease. And then we're going to talk about voice banking, what it is, and most importantly, what it's not. And then I'm going to take you through a practical where I'm going to register as a person with MND to record the first part of the voice banking. So you can see how to register and how to start recording phrases. I'm using ModelTalker for this demonstration. It's because ModelTalker is currently the most popular voice banking tool used here, and it is what we've been training on as well. So I thought I would show you this. Also, the flavor of ModelTalker we're using is the online one. So everything is online recording. Then after that, we'll move to the next stage of recording, the inventory, as they call it in ModelTalker. And we'll also talk about recording custom messages, custom phrases. I'll talk about that in a second. I'll give you some top tips and also kind of common issues that come up when recording using ModelTalker as well. I've also put on these slides my contact details, and you're very welcome to email or call me if you've got any questions with setting up voice banking, either for yourself, if you're a person living with MND, or if you're doing it on behalf of a person living with MND, or you are a professional working in the field. So I mentioned about the voice banking diagnosis project that I'm working on with the Motor Neuron Disease Association, and it has a number of goals. The first is for people living with MND to be in a position to make their own informed decision about whether to bank their voice or not. That means that they're provided with all the information, good, the bad, the ugly, about what voice banking is, how long it takes, and to make their own decision at a time when they could still potentially be able to bank their voice. So they have a relatively healthy voice, or they could nominate somebody that sounds like them or a family member to bank a voice for them. And then if the person living with MND decides to go ahead and bank a voice, that there's support available and equipment available to help them if they need it. Another element of this project is for professionals working within the field to have training, and equally importantly to have technical support. So once training is completed and you're working with people living with MND to help bank their voice if that's what they want, then there's technical support from myself or from my colleagues at the Motor Neuron Disease Association to support you On top of that, we are creating guides and how-to documents on how to voice bank, which this is one of them. There's also a scheme called the Voice Banking Service, Voice Banking Volunteer Scheme, where the Motor Neuron Disease Association trains volunteers with all the training that you'd expect for working with vulnerable adults, as well as that, with all the technical training required to support somebody to voice bank. This is currently in pilot, and there are 7 pilot areas. And get in touch if you're interested in referring into this scheme, and either myself or my colleague Matthew Hollis could advise you as to whether you are in a pilot area or not. And just to let you know that there's an online secure referral webpage to refer into that service. So the goals for this training are for you, having sat through the training, to be comfortable and prepared for the next time somebody wants to know about voice banking and a little bit on message banking, and for you to feel comfortable about how equipment is set up and how to register for voice banking, and to understand what the common difficulties that we come across are when recording using ModelTalker, and how to fix them. Ideally, after this training, you would record your own voice. You would bank your own voice. I say this because whenever somebody asks me about voice banking and what it's like, I play them my own banked voice. There are quite a lot of assumptions that people have or don't have about what a banked voice is. And on the internet, there are quite a lot of claims made about how close or not close it is to natural, real speech. So I think it's really important to hear what a banked voice is like, particularly to make the point that it cannot replace natural speech. It doesn't actually get that close to that, and nobody should claim that. So I think what I'll do is, now that you've heard my voice for a little while, I will switch and I will play you my banked voice through the Grid 3, which is a communication tool developed by Smartbox, which is frequently used for people who have difficulty talking. Just give me a second. Where is it? There it is. So here it is, and I'm just going to play you my voice.
My name is Richard Cave and I am a speech therapist based at RH in Putney. I am here to talk about voice banking. Please ask questions at any point.
So you can see and hear that a voice banked voice isn't the same as natural speech. And it's not the same as natural speech because it's more robotic, and it has kind of a flatter kind of affect, not so emotional, not so many emphasis or stresses on the words, or sometimes the emphasis and stresses appear in the wrong place, and sometimes the pronunciations are a bit out. Some of this can be fixed, like with the pronunciations. you can fix pronunciations that are not quite right, either in the software itself, or I can show you another way in ModelTalker. One thing that people say to me is that that banked voice, although it doesn't sound like natural voice, it does have an essence of my natural voice, of who I am. And the only person that really can't tell that is me. And this is kind of an ongoing issue within voice banking, because the person recording their voice, it's quite difficult to judge how your recorded voice sounds. Much better to have family or friends involved right from the start, so that they can just help out, because they know their loved one's voice much better than a loved one. It's certainly true in my case. So I'll just switch back. So I just demonstrated voice banking. It's a synthesized voice that I could literally type any message, any word, real or not real, and that synthesized voice that approximates mine will attempt to speak it through a device. Some phrases, some messages, some stuff that I'd want to say feels a little bit too important to use that kind of a synthesized voice to speak. So if I was to say to my wife, I love you, I'd much rather me say that in exactly the way that I wanted to say it, precisely the way I wanted to say it, and not have to rely on a synthetic approximation. So for important phrases like that, and as many other important phrases as I can think of, or significant names, places, things, I could just record those directly. I record them using a microphone, either into my computer or my smartphone or onto my iPad. And those phrases are recorded exactly the way I want them to be. And that is called message banking. And the nice thing about message banking these days is that once those recordings have been made, they can be integrated pretty much seamlessly into the software that voice banking is used for. So if we switch back to the grid 3, and you'll see I've got two I understand yous here, and I'll play this one first.
I can understand you. It just takes me longer to answer.
So that's my voice banked voice.
I can understand you. It just takes me longer to answer. Please be patient.
And that is a message bank. So that's my own voice. I just recorded that just as an example. And everything's on the same screen. So I can pick whichever way I would like to, or whatever message I would like on the screen, either personally recorded by me or using my synthetic banked voice. We don't really, in this session, in this training, I'm not really going to talk much more about message banking, a little bit more, but not that much. I'm going to concentrate on voice banking, how to record your voice or your client's voice using ModelTalker. But if you've got questions on message banking, then please get in touch. So as you'll see on the slides, which I'll post up and be available, I've put some resources, some shortcuts to help you. I just want to point out there's a fantastic blog by Lee Millard called 1 in 400, and it's on there, and it's worth a read. It's brilliant. The MND Association are very keen for people living with MND, if they've decided to back their voice, to go ahead without delay. And that's in part why we set up this project, to help them do just that. And also, the MND Association will provide loan equipment to help with voice banking. So most people don't have a recording headset that's required for voice banking, and so the MND Association can supply a loan device for that. And sometimes people's computers, maybe they're a bit old, or they're not working, or there's a problem with them, and the MND Association will consider providing a loan laptop for voice banking as well. And the most important thing is that an application needs to be made, and usually the the question that needs to be answered here is there any local service or local team that can provide a loan for this equipment rather than the MND Association? So whoever's filling in the form, which is usually a professional, will need to make that declaration or investigate first. So what I think I'll do is I'll click on this, and you can have a look. Let's hope that works. I'll switch over. And that's it. So that's where the shortcut goes to. And this is really worth reading. It's a fantastic service that the MND Association provide. And there's all sorts of really good information here. So we can loan the equipment that you need to voice bank, such as a headset, microphone, or laptop. You can apply for this equipment loan yourself using our equipment loan form. Just go in there. Any second now. And in it goes. Yeah. So equipment loan form, just download it and fill it in. Oh, that police siren. Lovely. Perfect for voice banking and re-recording. So I've just opened this. Almost there. Once the loan application has been approved, it usually takes around 2 to 3 weeks for the equipment to be delivered. So just fill in the form, and that's it. If there are any problems, my colleague Matthew Hollis will be in touch with you about that. Let's go back. So how much, what else does it cost? How much does it cost for voice banking? Well, as at today, ModelTalker costs $100 American to voice bank, to get a banked voice. However, for people living with MND, the MND Association will normally fund it, and there's a form that could be filled on the ModelTalker website once voice banking is completed. So what ModelTalker do is they tell you to register, then they tell you to record all the recordings, and then they ask you to listen to the voice that's been prepared, the banked voice that's been prepared, and only then, if you decide that you like it, then ModelTalker asks you about the fee, the $100. And at that point, if you decide that you like the voice, you can go to a page on the ModelTalker website. See if I can open that now. Probably can't. And then you just fill in the details there, and within a day or two, the M&D Association pay ModelTalker directly. So no credit cards need to be taken out of the wallet, of your wallet, personally with M&D's wallet, any wallet at any point. You just fill in the form, and the M&D Association and ModelTalker sort it out between themselves within a day or so. For clinicians like myself, it's completely free to record using ModelTalker. They view it as part of training, which is great. And for family members or significant others who want to record, kind of to show solidarity with their loved one and just bank their voice at the same time, and perhaps to donate the banked voice later, that's free as well. So what's the problem? Well, we know that people living with MND, in time, most will have difficulties communicating with speech. And most people living with MND will use some alternative type of communication for their daily needs, and it could be a device that uses a synthetic voice. And so that is where a voice-banked voice comes into its own. I'm going to switch back to the Grid 3 and just play you what a kind of standard synthetic voice is. So I'm just going to go into settings in Grid 3. And choose another voice rather than mine, my banked voice. I'll select Graham. And I'll just play this one.
My name is Richard Cave, and I am a speech therapist based at RHN in Putney. I am here to talk about voice banking. Please ask questions at any point.
So that's a standard voice, and you'll notice that a standard voice is better quality than my own banked voice, and that's more than likely because the standard voice, in recording a standard voice, many hours have been used to record that voice exactly the way that was wanted in a professional studio, whereas a voice-banked voice is usually recorded in somebody's lounge or a quiet room in the house, and with a limited number of phrases. So some people may choose to have a kind of a standard voice that isn't them, doesn't sound like them, because it's better quality, because it's clearer. Others may decide to kind of switch between a standard voice and their voice-banked voice, depending on who they're talking to or what the environment is. Like if somebody went to a busy restaurant or a pub or supermarket, somewhere that's quite noisy, or a station, they may choose to use a standard voice like the one you just heard because it's better heard in those noisy environments. whereas at home or talking to their loved ones, it may be they may prefer to use their own banked voice. And how soon after diagnosis of MND do people living with MND experience voice deterioration? This is a tricky one because at the individual level, it's really hard to know when voice might change. In this particular study I've got here, it was a very small study based in Finland, and they thought that between 4 to 6 months, people that had bulbar MND showed significant deterioration in their speech, and a year plus for other types of MND. And then 2 years afterwards, what happened? Well, most people with bulbar MND were using a speech generating communication device, and people with other types of MND, many were still using speech, but some were using speech generating device. You may hear this term, and I'm just saying it now, that there's something called a personalized synthetic voice. And what that is you do voice banking, you record your voice bank to create a personalized synthetic voice. So what is voice banking? So it is where you record a set list of phrases between 215 and 3,500, depending on what software you're using. And those phrases that you record for the technology we're thinking about get split out at the phoneme level, and those phonemes are matched with a pronunciation dictionary in English, which defines how the words are pronounced, and the phonemes are pronounced at within each word at beginning, middle, and end, or within each sentence. And in theory, all words in English can be pronounced correctly because the sounds have been matched to the pronunciation dictionary and retaining the essence of a person's voice. This is why it's so important that particularly clinicians bank their voice, so that when somebody, a prospective patient, whether they're MND or other progressive neuro or even ENT patients, ask them about voice banking, that they can demonstrate very, very clearly what a voice banked voice is like. So we know it's not a perfect replica. In fact, it's not a replica at all. It's just got an essence, in my opinion. Pronunciation and emphasis and the pace of speech is not the same as natural speech. And let's not forget that these banked voices are stored in communication devices. So it takes time to create sentences and comment using a communication device. It's certainly an awful lot slower than natural speech. And so we have to take into account all the things that make communication devices, or AAC as they're called, all the things that make communication devices successful, and all the things that are likely to make implementation of a communication device unsuccessful. That all counts when considering how effective a voice banked voice will be in real life. We know that communication devices sometimes end up not being used, and there are lots of reasons for that. What I'm saying is that all those reasons will have a bearing on whether a voice banked voice is actually used, because it's part of the communication device that's installed on it. Voice banking suppliers are kind of themselves do not make claims for kind of much emotion in a voice banked speech. So this one is based on Sarah Voice or Sarah Proc, sorry, Sarah Voice Me, which is another voice banking supplier, good one. And those three vertical lines show where they think the kind of level of emotion that can be captured within a voice banked voice. So, might get happy and relaxed sounding, but certainly not exhilarated or furious. So, not that strength of emotion. So, I always demonstrate my own banked voice to people living with MND so that they can, at the end of the day, make their own call on it. It can take many hours to bank a voice, and if we're working with a person living with MND and they're feeling healthy and they're relatively well, they need to make their own decision as to whether they want to spend that time when they're feeling well and healthy banking their voice. Or perhaps they may choose to do something else a bit more fun, as they're feeling well and healthy, like go to Thailand for 3 months or just go and do something rather than sit in front of a laptop and record a voice. And that's one other reason why professionals, speech therapists or others, should not make a decision around whether somebody should bank their voice or not. The voice banking evidence base is still to be built. There is little evidence right now that I've come across that can show difference between kind of activity and participation, quality of life, for somebody who has and uses their own banked voice versus somebody that uses a standard voice like Graham that you just heard earlier in grid 3. And let's not forget that many people who are losing their voice say that actually there's nothing that could replace using their speech the way they always have. Communication devices can't do it, and in my view, voice banking can't either. In this paper by Murphy, they cite the extended time it takes to communicate with a communication device, and a banked voice won't do anything to speed up communication. So we need to consider the voice bank, or a PSV, personalized synthesized voice, synthetic voice, in the context of the wider issues around communication devices, or AAC, because they're inextricably linked. Despite all this, there's been a lot of interest, a huge amount of interest in voice banking within the MND community. And voice banking is the most popular searched item on the MND Association website for the whole of 2017, and probably is still. Why do people living with MND decide to bank their voice? Well, there are kind of 4 reasons I've come across. This is not a scientific study; these are just interviews, which I conducted with people living with MND. The first It's really about identity, maintaining identity in voice, in speech, when other when the rest of identity was just disappearing. Um, Another one was actually the person living with MND not that bothered about voice banking or whether the voice coming out the device sounded like them or not, but their family was very bothered about it, and the person living with MND actually banked his voice for the family because his wife said she wanted to hear his voice coming out of a communication device and not a standard voice. Another idea is vocal insurance, and Jennifer Benson did a beautiful article in RCSLT, that's the Speech Language Therapy Bulletin magazine a few years ago, where she talks about banking, voice banking for insurance. So nobody is saying in the discussion, nobody needs to say, or nobody should be really talking about when people may or may not lose their voice, but they should bank their voice just for insurance, just in the same way that I buy motor insurance for my car. I'm not saying I'm going to have an accident in the next 12 months. All I'm saying is I'm buying insurance just in case. And that's the same with voice banking. That is Jennifer Benson's approach. And the other idea was about kind of having a project to focus on. So not necessarily voice banking at all. It's more about fighting back, doing something good. So in my clinical work, and this is just my opinion, I think that many, but not all, people living with MND and their families report a positive experience using a banked voice. And perhaps a banked voice doesn't have to be more than what you've heard, kind of a rough approximation of natural voice to deliver some benefit to people who are losing their natural speech, the powers of natural speech. And for those who work with patients, ENT type patients, ear, nose and throat surgery type of patients, there's an interesting paper that reported that voice banking prior to surgery, like laryngectomy or glossectomy, subjectively improves quality of life after surgery. And again, this is in my own clinical experience, this is my opinion, but where I found that banked voice is either rejected or not completed or not even started, is that sometimes a completed banked voice, because it's not natural voice and maybe it's reflecting dysarthria, which is a kind of difficulty with speech, that it reminds people of where they are now as opposed to the person they've been all their lives prior to MND. And it reminds me once again how personal, how closely linked to identity our voice is. Others feel let down by the quality of the banked voice. They expected more and were disappointed. And others felt like they'd started too late and their natural voice had already deteriorated. And so voice banking cannot improve a voice. It can, at best, it can only give you back the quality of the voice that is being recorded. So if somebody has slurred speech or dysarthric speech, Voice banking at best will be slurred and dysarthric right back. Others started perhaps a little late on progression of MD. It was just too difficult to complete the exercise or too much time was needed. Others felt that actually, although they'd started on it, actually thinking about it, it really wasn't a priority. Their priority was elsewhere. There was other stuff they wanted to do, and that's fine. Others felt they didn't have enough support. And finally, many, many people experienced technical difficulties with recording their voice. This is a big issue because voice banking starts off with a discussion about identity and voice and speech therapy type stuff, and it very quickly turns into an IT project. And all the issues with IT, if things go wrong, apply here. In 2017, a survey of 760 people living with MND, out of that number, 633 said they had not banked their voice. And of the 633, over 60% indicated that actually they didn't know about voice banking or hadn't heard about it until asked in the survey, or they didn't have enough information about it, or didn't start soon enough. And of that number, only 10% said they were not interested in banking their voice, which is really good to hear. So really good that they have hopefully been given the information, or from what they knew about it, they knew it wasn't for them and they've made their own decision. In my view, speech language therapists are ideally positioned to support decision making around voice banking and its future use in communication devices. However, I put an asterisk there because I think lots of other professionals are as well, particularly those professionals that work close or soon after diagnosis, and I'm including consultants, specialist nurses, OTs, physios, dietitians, all professionals that work with people living with MND close to diagnosis, so that they can have all the information at a time that they could do something about it. For speech therapists, though, in a survey I conducted for a specialist interest group in communication devices, only of the speech therapists that were working with people living with MND and who thought their patients might be interested in voice banking, less than a third felt comfortable even talking about voice banking. And in a way, that's not surprising. It's not surprising because speech therapists haven't been trained in voice banking. Many of them do not have the equipment to do it and have no experience. And so, given that scenario, it's not surprising at all why speech therapists, or indeed any profession, could actually feel confident in talking about, let alone doing it. One thing I do talk about with some people who want to bank their voice, if it feels like it's too late, like a voice is too far deteriorated, then they could consider a family member or a similar sounding friend or person to bank their voice on their behalf. And sometimes that works well, though it's a very personal decision whether the person living with MND feels comfortable with somebody else's voice used on their device. So when I'm referred a voice banking client, I need to check a number of things. The first is I want to understand, if they do want to bank their voice and where this referral has come from. Sometimes it's the person with M&D, they're very keen, they want to bank their voice. Sometimes it's the family, and sometimes it's actually another professional that says, actually, that'd be quite good. That'd be quite good for that person to bank their voice. So it's very important to know why somebody wants to bank their voice. And if it's the family, say, it's really important that family are there when I meet a person with MD. In fact, I'd rather have family there anyway, so we can kind of talk about the whole thing and desensitize it all. And then talking to the person who wants to bank their voice. Their voice doesn't necessarily need to be strong and clear, but I need to set expectations about how voice banking cannot improve voice quality, and that in many ways the quality of voice is at least as important at the end of the exercise as it is at the beginning. And bear in mind that the person might be recording many hundreds of phrases. We could be talking a few months, because people living with MND are actually, they get tired, sometimes they're not well, it's very busy, very hectic, and actually there are lots of valid reasons why recording many hundreds of phrases could take a long time. The other thing, now kind of turning to an IT project, that there is good Wi-Fi available, and that there is a computer that kind of works and is newish that's available, and with Google Chrome installed. ModelTalker only works with Google Chrome. iPads, tablets, we can't use those to voice bank, so it has to be a computer. Windows or Apple's fine. If you're in any doubt about the computer, whether it's good enough or maybe it's really noisy or there's a problem with it, I would recommend filling out a loan application form with the MND Association, the form that I showed you earlier, to just get that done, and then kind of need to worry about it a lot less. The other benefit of the laptops that are provided by the MND Association is they're set up for voice banking. So there's only one icon on the desktop, and that goes to ModelTalker. So it's very nice, very nicely set up. You also check that what equipment, or I would check what equipment they need from the MD Association. I would say, at the least, unless they already have a headset recorder. And I'm just going to show you what headset recorder I'm talking about, because ModelTalker are quite specific on it, that you need a headset recorder that connects via USB to your computer. And I went on to Amazon earlier, and this is the device, this is the headset that we use. There are other ones that ModelTalker recommend, like the PC36, but very important that it has a USB socket. And although ModelTalker recommend a few headsets, this is the one we use, and actually, reasonably priced, usually around £35, but currently 26, and that's okay. While I'm thinking about it, ModelTalker, I'm going to go onto the website. This is the ModelTalker website. Just go modeltalker.org, you see, modeltalker.org. They are super helpful, and what I recommend you to do is read their frequently asked questions section and other help which is available. They try their darndest to get everybody in a position to record the best quality voice recording that's possible, and this has been really helpful information, and I'd recommend that you read it. I think it's essential to. Then once equipment, if you've ordered equipment, make sure that it's arrived. Usually 2 weeks, can be 3 weeks. It's getting very busy with these orders at the moment, and then you arrange to visit at the best time for the person living with MND, when they feel well, their voice is strongest and it's quiet, and that you have family members present. Because the most important thing is for people living with MD to be autonomous. If they decide to bank their voice, then they can do it without too much outside help. And one nice thing to do is to train family members on how to help them bank their voice, particularly if they have upper limb difficulty controlling the computer. So a family member just knows how to help, how to set everything up, and so the person living with MD can bank their voice at any point. They don't have to wait for your next appointment. The other thing is, we're working on a computer now, so make sure that all the Windows updates are run, and there's no kind of virus scanning running and all the rest of it. So the computer is just up to date and not being kind of processed, the processor's not being used heavily. And there are my contact details there, richard.cave@mdassociation.org, and my number. And if you've got a technical question about voice banking, you're very welcome to get in touch. It's part of the project. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to register as if I was a person living with MND onto ModelTalker. So I'm going to switch now, and if I go to ModelTalker, modeltalker.org, and remember, I'm in Google Chrome. It has to be Chrome. And this is the landing page. So now I'm going to register, new. And you see there are these options here. Voice banker, so I'm going to register as that, as somebody that needs to bank their voice. A proxy voice banker, so this is somebody who, like family member or similar sounding friend, I'm going to bank my voice on behalf of my loved one so that my loved one can use it. A voice donor, somebody who wants to bank their voice and then make it available for others who might find it beneficial. Clinicians, speech therapists, others, doctors, OTs, and other assistant. So it's important to select the right one, because with Voice Banker, this will cost $100 to if the person decides that they want to use the voice, and if they have MND, then the MND Association will fund it. They are going to go in here as a voice banker. For all the other sections, you won't be asked for that $100. Important thing to note here is that this form must be filled in by the person who is going to be banking the voice. You can't fill it, no one else should fill it in, or whoever, or if somebody gives help to a person with MD to fill it in, then the person with MD must give permission and have explained all the options here. In red, these are the mandatory fields, so I'll just start. This CC email is very useful. So if you're a treating speech therapist working with somebody with MND, the person with MND this would be their details, and you would put in your own SLT email here, so that whenever ModelTalker writes to your client, you are on copy as well. The next thing is you need to create a user ID, and I'm just going to just do something. Yeah. So you need to create a user ID that is specific to you. So and one thing to notice about it is that the user ID is case sensitive. So you need to make a note of your user ID and password to and be very specific that it's case sensitive. I've spent quite a lot of time trying to work out why my user ID and password doesn't work, and it's because either I've capitalized it, or I've done some slight error. So both the user ID and password are case sensitive, and let's have a look. We'll do that. So the other thing to mention here is that the grey areas are optional. Now, I do not see the reason why ModelTalker, why it's essential for them to have my address or my client's address. So I recommend that you don't fill those in unless there's a good reason. Here's another one, gender, that's fine. And age you have to put in, right? Here's another optional one, English variant and regional dialect. It makes no difference to the eventual recording what English variant you put in or regional dialect. As the list is incomplete, is not comprehensive for the English variant regional dialects, I recommend that you don't fill it in. If it was complete, then maybe, but you'll probably find that quite a few are just not there. This is for English, British English. Operating system, you can have a guess, but again, it's optional. Now, these two are not optional, these two. So, the first question here is, I'm the above named individual, give you permission to retain my speech files and use them in your research to improve the voice generation software. Allowing to retain my files will make it possible for me to receive updates to my voice in the future, should that be necessary or desirable. So as the technology improves, then it would be nice for the voice file that I would have recorded to improve as well. So I generally recommend that you do give permission for that. This second one is entirely your choice or your client's choice, whether you give permission for demonstration purposes, permission for your voice for demonstration purposes. I don't know. I'll say no for this one. And then at the bottom, there's I've read and agree. So there's that. And then you register. So I'm just going to pop back to the screen. So my top tip is to make a note of the log ID and password. Already talked about that. And so with the client registered, if they're feeling well, they're ready, the voice sounds good, you check the computer, you rebooted the computer to make sure no background updates are running and there's no Windows updates. Unfortunately, if there's a big Windows 10 update or something like that running, I recommend you wait, and that might be having to come back, but it just takes, it might interfere. Virus protection software not running a full scan. You double check that Google Chrome is installed and that you're running ModelTalker in Google Chrome and that the Wi-Fi is okay. Now, in the slides, there are some helpful hints as if there are problems, troubleshooting stuff. I won't go through it here, but they are in the slides. Now, microphone positioning. This is taken directly from the ModelTalker website. So the position of the microphone should be exactly the same for each recording session. Never position the microphone directly in front of your mouth. It should be parallel to your lips, close to your face, and far enough to the side of your mouth to ensure that any direct airflow from the mouth and nose cannot hit the microphone. Don't allow any hair, whiskers, or anything else. Oh, that'd be great to have a chance of that. To brush against the microphone while recording. Speaking style and rate. The most important thing is to read the help section in ModelTalker about this, but what they also say, what they emphasize is be consistent. So be consistent with your speaking style, be consistent with your rate from one recording session to the next, and listen to some recordings as you go to hear the way you sounded, and just make sure that you're consistent throughout every session that you record using ModelTalker. And there'll be many because you can't do it all in one go. The voice sounds the same, speaking rate's the same, loudness is the same. Consistency is the key. I talk about creating a shortcut to ModelTalker, which is in the slides. Okay, so what I'll do in a second, let me just quickly, just going to borrow this for a second. Sorry, I'm just being very quick. Finishing off the registration. Just a second, and then we'll. Great. So I just put a password in there, and that is no. Don't remember that. So this is me. So I've registered, and now it comes to the thank you page. And what I want to do now is record the screen. Let me see if there's. I should lose my mouse as usual. Yeah, sorry. So further down, we want to online. So everything is online. We don't want to download any software. ModelTalker has a kind of a downloadable software option, but we want to record everything online. There are a few reasons for that. Most important, in my view, is that everything we record, every phrase that your client records, that you record, gets saved to the cloud just after recording. So if there's a problem with the laptop, or the laptop lost, or there's a problem with it, nothing gets lost. All the recordings are safely up in the cloud. Alright, so just go down. So this is very useful information. Let's talk about where we're recording. Where I'm recording in a room with nice thick carpet, with lots of drapes and a big stuffed sofa, lots of kind of sound deadening stuff in my house. Sometimes people ask if they could record in the conservatory, which is, a nice, beautifully bright room. So the only problem is that conservatories often have hardwood floors, and surrounded by glass, which is very reflective for noise and rubbish for voice banking. Later on, or in the slides, if you want to look at them later, there's advice which have been taken direct from the ModelTalker website about how best to set up your recording environment. I'll just press continue. So let's go to I just want to go to the next page. Okay, recording. Let's go to recording online recorder. All right, so this stage will happen every single time you come or your client comes to record, the settings tab. Because we're right at the very beginning, we need to record what's called the inventory. And that's 10 phrases which need to be recorded, and they will be assessed and listened to by the folks at ModelTalker. And they will give constructive feedback as to whether they're good recordings and how to improve them. They may ask you to re-record those phrases many times, but just to make sure that the quality is the best it can be. So I type in screen inventory. Note, it has to be in lowercase. Every inventory, everything you type in here has to be in lowercase, and do not put spaces in. Spaces nullify the word. You cannot have spaces. And then now check to see if the microphone is recognized, and there it is. So I'm using a Sennheiser, and so it's selected a Sennheiser. Sometimes if your microphone was not plugged in before switching on the PC or logging into ModelTalker, it may not be recognized by ModelTalker. If that's the case, if you see something like input 0, input 1, input 2, something like that under microphone, e.g. not your microphone, this is all you need to do. You'd close out of here, and where your name is here, you log out, and then you log back in again. And yep, I'm using a head-mounted USB mic. I'll go in. Oh no, what have I done? Let's look. So I'm there. And then the settings have popped up and you'll find the microphone there. So just type in screen again. Now we need to do something called measure the silence. So it's this button here. What we're doing is ModelTalker cannot tell what you are saying when it asks you to record. You could literally say anything you like and it wouldn't know. All it knows is when you start talking and when you stop. But it can only know that if it knows the level of background noise to be able to distinguish between your voice and the background noise, and that's why we have to measure the background noise. So I've got my headset on and I'm going to measure the background noise where it matters, which is where the microphone will be when I record. So I'm just going to measure it now. Okay, so it's recorded, it's come back as minus 71.2, and ModelTalk advised that anywhere between minus 60 and minus 80 is an acceptable silence measure. So that's okay. And you can have a listen. I can have a listen to see if there's anything untoward. So quick listen. Didn't hear too much. I think I moved slightly. There was something there. One thing I want to mention to you is the silence pad. So I said that ModelTalker only knows when you start talking, when you stop talking, and then it will stop record. When you stop talking, it will automatically stop recording, which is all very well. But for people with poor respiratory support, like many people with MND, they'll probably need to take multiple breaths per phrase. Some of these phrases we're going to be asked to do are quite long. So taking multiple breaths per phrase, they should be allowed to do. And the silence pad is just the number of seconds that ModelTalker allow somebody to take a breath or take a break within a phrase before ModelTalker determines that they've finished talking. Because bear in mind, ModelTalker has no idea what they're saying. So what I find helpful is for people who I know need to take time and need to take multiple breaths, I adjust that silence pad to maybe, 2.5 or 3. And that gives people time. And that could be the difference between somebody with poor respiratory support making it through the ModelTalker for as far as they want to go, or just being cut off all the time halfway through sentences and not achieving their goal. Now I've got this good respiratory support, so I'm going to put it back to 0.5 and press start. Now there's a vocal cue that was set into my headphones. I'm just going to see if I could put it through the laptop speakers so you can hear.
I say this to my friends.
So for every phrase that ModelTalker wants you to record, there's a verbal and a visual cue. So, nice American man, I say this to my friends, and when I'm ready to record, I just press record, I say the words, and it will automatically stop recording. I don't need to press again. Okay, off we go. I say this to my friends.
The grizzled old fellow could see on one side.
So you can see it saved the phrase. The phrase has already been uploaded to the cloud, and automatically moves on to the next phrase. Before I do speak that next phrase, I want to show you these traffic lights. These traffic lights are a great cause of worry to us English speakers on this side of the Atlantic, because it looks for all the world that a red traffic light and even a yellow traffic light might be a problem. All I'd say is that these traffic lights are for American voices, American accents, and not necessarily geared to other accents. The one to worry most about is this A, which is amplitude for volume. If the amplitude of volume is green or yellow, that's okay. There's no problem here. For R and P, rate and prosody, I think it is, we don't need to worry about those. So even if they're red, both red, we just move on. However, we have to be consistent all the way through with our own rate and our own prosody. So we just need to be consistent with how we are talking, but not necessarily be judged by those traffic lights. So one problem I had when I banked my voice was that after many hundreds of phrases, I got very bored. I was getting very bored, and I started speeding up. And that was a very bad thing. So I shouldn't speed up. I should just speak at my normal rate and just keep on talking. The other thing is that when we say these phrases, we don't necessarily need to have to kind of get across the meaning of the phrase, emphasize in very dramatic fashion. We should be more worried about articulating the words than getting the meaning of the phrase across. So be clear and be consistent. So let's go on to the next one. I'm just going to replay that cue.
The grizzled old fellow could see on one side.
The grizzled old fellow could see on one side.
He couldn't even find a place.
He couldn't even find a place.
Behind them was the dark forest.
Behind them was the dark forest.
He had rides in the wheelbarrow.
He had rides in the wheelbarrow.
I play with my baby sister.
I play with my baby sister.
The whole circle was agitated.
The whole circle was agitated.
Is he made of tin or stuffed? Asked the lion.
Is he made of tin or stuffed? Asked the lion.
The wolves surged to meet him.
The wolves surged to meet him.
There's another way you can get a tooth out.
There's another way you can get a tooth out. Okay, so those are the 10 phrases. And what you should remind everybody, and I need to remind everybody, is that whatever accent, however you pronounce these words, you pronounce them exactly the way that you should be pronouncing them. Don't be influenced by the American cue. It doesn't matter how he's saying it. You say it the way that you pronounce it. Just be consistent. And here there are little speakers, so you should listen to a few of them just to see what you think of them.
Is he made of tin or stuffed?
Oh, that's a bit dodgy. So let's re-record that one.
Is he made of tin or stuffed? Asked the lion.
So I just clicked on it, clicked on the phrase, and it came up here. Now I'm going to record it. Is he made of tin or stuffed? Asked the lion. Let's have a listen now.
Is he made of tin or stuffed? Asked the lion.
I'm just going down here.
Is he made of tin or stuffed? Asked the lion.
So this is a really good example of a problem. Let's see if it's happened to all of them.
The whole circle was agitated. The whole circle was agitated. I play with my baby sister. He rides in a wheelbarrow. Behind them was the dark forest. In my face. The grizzled old fellow could not.
Yeah.
I say this.
So these have problems, as you can tell. I had no idea that there would be a problem. And so, just try another one. Yeah.
Paul surged to meet him.
I think what the problem here is that I've got video, I've got online video recording going on my laptop, and it's taking all the processing power for the voice banking. Really interesting, and actually very, very useful that this has happened, because as you can see in this column here, they're all greens and yellows. So from a volume perspective, it's really good. So no errors are being reported. These two columns we can ignore because we don't have American accents, but on the understanding that we have to be consistent. Now, one thing I might just check is the microphone. I just want to check if there's an issue. Let's have a look. Let's quickly check this. Oh, it should be recording, shouldn't it? Microphone. Quick look. I don't know if I'm in the right place. So So by the sound of it, let's have a look. I might re-record them again. Let's have a quick look. I just want to check. Come on. So I'm just looking in the driver properties for this headset that I've got, and lo and behold, would you believe it? So in the tips and tricks that I have given you in the slides that you have a look at it, it asks you if there's a problem with the microphone. It asks you to check the microphone properties and see if there's something called automatic gain control switched on. This is a very bad thing if it is switched on, and in some computers it's automatically switched on, in others there's not even an option for it. But as you can tell, listening to my phrases, there was a problem. So I'm just switching this off. Good grief. That gave me a shock. And okay. All right. Well, this has been good training. Good grief. All right. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to record them all again.
There's another way you can get a tooth out.
There's another way you can get a tooth out.
There's another way you can get a tooth out. Let's get a tooth out.
No, it's not right. Yeah, well, that was one thing. Let me just make sure I've got that I'm recording using the headset. Yeah. That's fine. Okay, so I think at least part of the problem is that I have another. I'm running this screen recording. So, wow, what a good lesson that is. So, just like me. So, listen to settings. If there's a problem, if you find that there's a problem, make sure that, certainly in this case, make sure that nothing else is running in the background. I can't unfortunately stop it here because I'm doing the cam. And the second thing is that check for automatic gain control that is off. So in my case, I went right clicked on the speaker icon, open the speaker settings, and check the device properties of the headset. And in my case, I went to where it was custom, switched off AGC. Yeah, that's good. So I can't complete the screen because I'm doing the cam recording, but you get the idea. And then once that has been recorded to your satisfaction, having listened to a few, you press finalize, and then that tells the folks at ModelTalker that you're ready for those recordings to be listened to by them, and they'll give you feedback on the quality of the recordings, and they usually take a couple of days. Although they're based in the States, they're very quick usually, so excellent. So I'll just switch back to the presentation. So what did we do? We recorded the screen. We went to recording, online recorder. We typed in screen in lowercase with no spaces. We checked that the correct microphone was logged in ModelTalker, Sennheiser. We then measured the silence by being quiet ourselves and having the microphone in the right position, ready for when we start to record. And we aimed for between minus 60 and minus 80, and we got that. We talked a little bit about the silence pad with the respiratory support, making it a bit longer to compensate for that if necessary. And we recorded the 10 phrases, worrying about the left-hand traffic light column for volume. That could be green or yellow, and not worrying so much about these on the right because they're for American accents. But we remind ourselves to be consistent throughout and concentrating on articulating the word, not necessarily conveying the meaning of the sentence, but being consistent. all the way through. And then we try to re-record some phrases, having listened to some, which in my case, they were not good. So I tried to re-record it. I found a problem, re-recorded it again, found a problem, went into the microphone settings, stopped the automatic gain, but there was still a problem, and probably because I've got other software running. If you stumbled or if you ended up saying the wrong thing, you can just re-record by clicking on the phrase, and that's that. And then when you're happy with the recordings from what you can hear, and ModelTalker is okay, you've got green and yellows on the left-hand column of the traffic lights, then you can press that finalize button, and that just lets ModelTalker know that you're ready. And if they come back and says, within a day or two, and say, okay, you're good to go, now let's move on to the next thing, then I'd recommend that you take a photo of the headset, either if you're recording it on your head or on mine. Just take a selfie so that at least you can see exactly where that headset is. So picture this. I'd completed the screen of inventory, those 10 phrases, and I was very happy with it. And ModelTalker came back to me within a couple of days and said, yeah, we're happy with it. Then go back in, and exactly where you put the word screen, you put the word mini, and that will give 215 phrases for you or your client to speak. And that's done on purpose because 215 is the minimum number that is required to create a banked voice. It goes without saying that the more recordings that are made that are acceptable to ModelTalker, the better quality a banked voice will be within limits. So at 215 phrases, it's not going to be more than a robotic banked voice. And it's really important if somebody's aiming for that, just to get to 215, to explain that that's all we're aiming for, that's all we're going to get. And then once the mini inventory is done, you finalize, just like I tried to do with the screen. And then you can go on to the maxi, and the maxi inventory, we key in maxi lowercase exactly where you keyed in screen, is 2,940 phrases, and that will take you to the most phrases, although you could bank more, but the maximum number of phrases, standard phrases. And it's important to note that both for you and for a person living with M&D is that once you start the maxi inventory, you don't need to go through to the end. You just record as many as feasible, as many as you can. And once, if they've had enough or voice starts to deteriorate, you can request a voice at any point. So even if they do like 10 in maxi and voice deteriorates suddenly, then you can request a voice at that point, or 2,000 request a voice at that point. Or if you get right to the end, you can finalize. So just going to go back here. So although it's not highlighted, I clicked on my name, at least message 10, that's the one I set up. And although I can't select it right here because I'm still in the screen and I haven't finalized, you click request a voice there. Yeah. So I'm just going to log out of here and log in again. And I go, and just imagine that I had completed the screen, and ModelTalker come back to me and said, "Yep, Richard, you're fine. Go on to record Mini." I go into recording, online recorder again. Where I keyed screen, I just key in Mini, check the headset, and press measure for the silence. So that's between -60 and -80, everything's fine. And then press start.
Joe's gentlemanly demeanor amused and set him at his ease.
So you can see here we're at position 0 of 215. And so you just record Joe's gentlemanly demeanor amused and set him at his ease. And off you go.
The forefront of the pack was a large grey wolf.
The last thing I want to show you is something called the custom inventory. So under your name, there's something called, you can see request of voices is highlighted now. Under your name, you can select custom inventory, and it takes you to a page where you can key in people, places and things, or phrases that are so important that you want them pronounced exactly the way they should. You know how earlier I talked about message banking, about how important phrases should be pronounced, but should be said exactly right. So I use the example of saying to my wife, "I love you." So I could type that exactly like that, and the people, I don't know, some words are unlikely to be pronounced precisely right by synthetic voices, unless you do kind of work elsewhere. And there's one person's name which is likely to be incorrectly pronounced, so I'll do it here. So, and I could type in up to, I think it's 50 people, places and things, just one new line. Places, one per line, and things. And I think it's 1,500 phrases here. Interestingly, if you're going to do an address, if you're going to write an address, it's best to put it as a phrase, because it's just a very specific phrase, isn't it? There you go. And then once you're happy with your selection, you can press continue, and those words and those phrases will be added to the inventory that you're working on. So I'm in Mini inventory, and those words and phrases will be added to the end of that inventory, so beyond 215. So there are two problems here. One is that this page can only be accessed once per inventory. So you need to have a really good think about all the people, place, things and phrases which you want to record, and type them into this page all at the same time. And the other thing is that these phrases, some of which may be more important than anything else that needs to be recorded, are recorded at the end of an inventory, not at the beginning. So need to think about that. And if you've got questions about that, there are kind of ways around it, a little bit ways around it. There's a special inventory called seed, SEED, which only has two phrases in it. So you could select seed, SEED, lowercase, where you put screen in, and then go straight into this custom inventory, and you just record the 2 phrases, and then you go straight into the custom inventory. So yeah, so there's that. I'll cancel out of that, and I'll come back to the slides. So I talked about the screen, I talked about the mini inventory, the maxi inventory, and of course you can request a voice at any point beyond 215. So cut. So troubleshooting, although it didn't happen here, if ModelTalker has not recognized that you have a microphone installed, it will just say input 1, input 2, where it said Sennheiser. All you have to do is log out of ModelTalker and log back in again, making sure that your headset is plugged in, and then it should be okay. Clipping, that didn't happen here either, but if there are if the microphone is capturing puffs of air associated with plosives, then ModelTalker will throw an error message. So recommend, if that happens, then move the microphone down so it's about parallel with your chin, and then that should get rid of the error. Troubleshooting 3, reducing noise problems. This is always an issue, but just try and keep away from noise at all as possible. Try and close windows, try and be in a nice room with lots of insulation, lots of carpet and curtains and sofas, but there are some tips there. Other noise problems like computer noise. Often older computers have kind of fans whirring and all the rest of it. There's a nice tip here where you could try reducing computer noise by unplugging the laptop and running on battery and moving away from any fluorescent lighting. I have to say, the moment I get worried about a laptop because it's so noisy, I am going to apply to the M&D Association for a loan laptop, because that's set up and they're very new. They're very new devices. So there are some more tips there for you. And I think we're just about there. So at the end of the exercise, you'll be asked, at the end of ModelTalker, once you've recorded all the phrases you want to record, you'll be asked to what they call audition the voice. And ModelTalker provide not only 1 sample voice, but 6 sample voices for you to choose between. And there's quite a kind of structured way of doing that. You just follow the instructions, and then a couple of days later, once you've submitted that, or maybe up to a week later, ModelTalker will say, okay, your voice is ready. And then when you come to download the voice, if you've registered as a person with MND, then you'll be asked for $100. But remember to select the supporting organizations. In fact, I'll just show you that now.